As we approach the anniversary, the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Lexington and Concord, which occurred on April 19th, 1775, the British are still intent on destroying the United States, on getting us back into the so-called Commonwealth, really meaning empire. Good morning. Today is April 17th. And the latest on this battle is that the British are trying to derail President Trump's efforts to end the Ukraine-Russia proxy war. The latest has to do with the attack in Sumy, where the Russians targeted a military awards ceremony. What they were told or was announced was a military awards ceremony. The Russians have said that they killed 60 military officers. The Ukrainians said they have killed only civilians. They tried to get a G7 statement condemning Russia, saying they're not ready for peace. But according to Bloomberg, quote, President Donald Trump's administration told allies that it couldn't sign the G7 statement denouncing the attack as it is working to preserve the space to negotiate peace. Canada, which holds the G7 presidency this year, told allies that without the U.S. endorsement, it would be impossible to go ahead with the statement. Now, you have to wonder why no one is denouncing Israel for blowing up hospitals and refugee camps, but that is another part of the briefing today. We had a discussion yesterday with Helga Zepp-LaRouche, who, by the way, will be on at 11 a.m. this morning with Ambassador Chas Freeman, and everybody should tune in for that. He was the translator for Nixon when Nixon first opened up China, and he also was a former ambassador to Saudi Arabia. He is really the senior diplomat of the United States. That's at 11 a.m. today. What Helga Zepp-LaRouche was raising yesterday is the talk by likely incoming German chancellor. It's not totally in stone yet. Friedrich Merz, formerly of BlackRock, is saying that he does want to send Taurus missiles to Ukraine. Now, at the moment, the Taurus missiles would be guided by the U.S. Defense Department. So obviously, if we want to get a peace deal and normal relations with Russia, we should block that. Also, apparently, operating this system would require German troops on the ground in Ukraine for a war with Russia. Does that sound like something that happened about 83 years ago? Not a good idea. So the German Defense Minister Pistorius, who may or may not remain in that post under Merz, is saying that he never authorized this. Obviously, doing this, having German soldiers on the ground launching long-range German missiles into Russia would make Germany a target of a Russian counterattack. Germany would be a co-belligerent in this war. Not a good idea, but it shows you the insanity of some in Europe. Now, otherwise in the United States, and some of you who listen to Scott Ritter or Colonel Douglas McGregor may have heard both of them saying that there is a great deal of confusion coming from the Trump administration, that different spokesmen, Rubio, Hegseth, Vice President J.D. Vance, tend to say different things at different times. And this is very bad policy. It's not just a bad look. It can create confusion among nations with whom we are trying to avoid military conflict. And in fact, the negotiator, the Iranian foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, said of all of these conflicting signals, which Steve Witkoff, who seems to be the most rational, who seems to be capable of listening to the people with whom he is speaking, which is why he has conducted successful, not in the end result, but positive and reasonable talks so far with Russia, with Iran, with Israel, and other places, is because he is rational. But Others have made contradictory statements. He has made statements contradicting earlier statements. And so Dr. Arakchi commented, quote, "If we continue to hear contradictory and conflicting positions, we are going to have problems." It is a big problem to have a president of the United States who tends to make his announcements on Truth Social, and one wonders what the level of coordination is, and also what tentacles from the British, from the neocons, from the Zionist lobby that don't have American interests at heart are in this administration. So the indirect talks between Iran and the United States that were scheduled for Saturday to occur in Italy are now going to be back in Oman, but hopefully this progress will continue. Now, I also want to say something about the backlash, because as people know, since March 2nd, so now for over a month, Israel has maintained a blockade of all humanitarian aid into Gaza. They've continued the shelling, the bombing. They are attacking hospitals in the West Bank, and there is an international outcry. And the opposition within Israel is also growing massively. In fact, 1,000 active duty and retired Israeli military released a public letter denouncing Bibi Netanyahu, saying that there must be a ceasefire and the hostages must be freed. And the only way the hostages can be freed is if there is a ceasefire, and that Bibi Netanyahu doesn't seem remotely interested in this, but is only trying to advance his own career. I think this is interesting because it reminds me of something Martin Luther King said about the nonviolent resistance of the civil rights movement, where he said, we can absorb their blows and their attacks longer. We have greater capacity to absorb their assault on our freedoms than they have to deliver it. And clearly, it is striking the conscience and the soul of people in Israel to see their government carrying out these crimes. Also in the United States, 27 not Israeli, but 27 Jewish American organizations have filed an amicus brief for the Tufts University doctoral student, Ms. Ozturk, who is earning her doctorate, I think, in child education, et cetera. And what the Jewish organizations write is that they say, we are, quote, compelled to file this brief because the arrest, detention, and potential deportation of Rumeisa Ozturk for her protected speech violate the most basic constitutional rights. The government instead appears to be exploiting Jewish Americans' legitimate concerns about anti-Semitism as a pretext for undermining core pillars of American democracy, the rule of law, and the fundamental rights of free speech and academic debate on which this nation was built. They go on to say that targeting people and taking away their rights does not help prevent anti-Semitism. If anything, it exacerbates it. The only thing that this student did was to write an op-ed decrying the genocide going on in Gaza. She did not make any pro-Hamas or anti-Semitic statements, but she was here legally earning her doctorate, and she is being threatened with deportation. And people may have seen the video of the 6 ICE officials wearing masks abducting her on a street corner. So that is also perhaps going to be reversed. Hopefully, people are going to stand up for this, and this carnage will come to an end. Now, finally, I wanted to say something about the tariff war, because while the tariffs, as Helga Zepp-LaRouche said, the tariffs are not going to be the cause of the crash, but they may trigger it. You've heard that there's now talk of a 245% tariff on China, certain goods coming from China. Apparently, it hasn't been implemented yet, but I found this to be of note and ridiculous. So the Wall Street Journal says, U.S. plans to use tariff negotiations to isolate China. That's going to be about as effective as isolating Russia. China has 1.4 billion people. We have 325 million people. China is building infrastructure right now in about 145 nations. And I just wanted to share something with you to put it in context. I don't think the people running this tariff war realize our vulnerability to compared to what China has become. So this is based on this video about the infrastructure in China, saying that it takes what it takes the US 20 years to build, China can build in 43 hours. That has to do with a train station they built virtually overnight. But listen to this. In 1988, China had virtually no motorways. By 2018, it had 84,000 miles of superhighways. Okay, that's 30 years. From 0 superhighways to 84,000 miles, more than any other nation in the world. Since 2011, that's 14 years ago, China has been building 6,000 miles of highways every year. China has 28,000 miles of high-speed rail lines. The fastest maglev train travels at 268 miles per hour. China has built a prototype maglev train that travels in a vacuum tube, which can go 600 miles per hour. That's faster than an airplane. China has 232 times the shipbuilding capacity of the United States. Who is more likely to suffer a trade war with China? As one Chinese person was quoted, he said, well, we have a civilization going back 5,000 years, the United States only 250 years. If they don't want to trade with us anymore, we will survive. I think people should be aware of this. And then look at this. This is one of the beautiful bridges. And to the point about the isolation, over half of the world's long span bridges are built by Chinese engineers. Okay, so the Chinese are building over half of the world's long span bridges. I don't know when the United States even last built a major long span bridge. We have one in Delaware. They did the storm surge protection around Lake Pontchartrain in Louisiana. So there's some interesting infrastructure that certainly has been built. We are not building 6,000 miles of new highway every year. We have not 1 mile of high-speed rail where China has 28,000 miles. So really, who's kidding whom? China didn't do this to us. We did it to ourselves with our idiotic decision first in 71 to decouple the dollar from the gold reserve system, and then the decision to go from trading in physical goods to just playing with money and creating a bubble with nothing to back it up, which is where we stand, which is why LaRouche's 4 laws, starting with Glass-Steagall, urgently need to be implemented. So that's it for today. But before I go, I just wanted to remind you, you see here today, Helga Zepp-LaRouche at 11 a.m. will be conducting an interview with Ambassador Chas Freeman. I think this is going to be extremely important and timely, and I hope you're able to tune in.